Welcome to this Middle School Building Committee meeting on April 28th. I'm Pat Nelson. I'm one of the co-chairs. We have lots of people here today, some new people here from Hill and some of the familiar faces. But I'm going to first do a roll call to acknowledge who's here. So if you could just let me know if you're here. Alexa Anderson. I see you.
I see her. She's muted, but she's here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Court Booth.
Present.
Heather Bout.
Hi there.
Frank Cannon.
Yeah.
Justin Cameron.
Morning.
Peter Fishalis. Here with us? No. Okay. Dawn Gorelio.
Hi, good morning, present.
Good morning, Dawn. John Harris. I don't see John. Maybe he'll be joining us later. Russ Hughes.
Here.
Lori Hunter.
Good morning.
Matt Johnson. No, Matt wasn't going to be able to make it. Right. Amanda Cohn.
Here.
Carrie LaFleur.
Here.
Morning, Carrie. Pat Nelson, I'm here. Chris Popov.
Here.
Charlie Parker.
Here.
Matt Root.
Here.
Jared Stetton.
Jared's not coming this morning.
Okay, thank you. Steven Stashewski. Okay.
Could we put a note on to include Gail Dowd on the list as Concord Finance Director interim?
Oh, okay. Gail, are you here?
She is.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
So if Hill, you could add that to our future agendas and to our building committee list. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So we have middle school building committee minutes from February 17th and from March 17th. So let's start with February 17th. Are there any, anybody have anything to say about those minutes? Okay, so somebody want to propose we accept those?
So moved.
Do we need a second?
Second, but Pat, if we have to do a roll call vote, does it make sense to get any edits on the second one and then approve them together?
Very efficient, Heather. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any edits for the minutes of March 17th? Okay, so somebody want to move, we accept both minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
All right, and a roll call vote. Alexa,
Yes.
Court Booth,
Yes.
Heather Bout,
Yes, please.
Frank Cannon,
Yes.
Justin Cameron,
Yes.
Peter Fishalis. Not here. Dawn Gorelio. John Harris still isn't here. Russ Hughes,
Yes.
Lori Hunter,
Yes.
Amanda Cohn.
I think I'm non-voting now.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I don't think you have to
Oh.
include all the staff anymore on the votes, Pat.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I'll have to figure that out. I approve. Chris Popov,
Yes.
Charlie Parker,
Yes.
Matt Root,
Yes.
Steven Stashewski.
Yes.
Okay. So we can proceed with our agenda. Heather, do we have some correspondence?
Sorry, yes. Oops, let me get to, I'm sorry, I'm usually ready with it teed up and I forgot to tee it up in time here. Let me just get to it quickly. I have it collected already. Oh, actually, we didn't, there's none in here. We didn't have any since our last meeting.
Okay.
So there we go.
Do we have a communications update?
Not an update as much as I was gonna say, we do a general building committee report after each one. And now that we're going to be looking at some really cool stuff today, as I looked at the slides, I think we'll do a little bit more of an update after this and get things out to the public more. But so far it's been pretty basic, but we'll keep getting things out to the public.
Right. And I think we had some correspondence, or Matt Johnson had suggested we need to be sending a report to the school committee and to the select board. Lori?
Yeah, so I didn't get to it yet, but I'm working on how maybe Hill can help us with that. The charge of the committee includes a quarterly update to the select board and school committee. So we just need to, I think, take the communication that's already happening and formalize it more. So I'm going to work with Hill on how we can gather what we need to in one place. I think we have different versions of things. One is probably the summary we do of every meeting is probably not enough. And then Hill does a monthly report that they're getting caught up on. That's probably too much. So there's probably a middle there to come up with the quarterly. So we're working on it.
Pat, you're muted. Pat, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm not muted. Looks like we've been doing a pretty good job of documenting our meetings, and we can just get it into the right format. So I think that's in good shape. Okay, so can we have an update from our OPM?
Sure. We had kind of two things to go over this morning. First was just talking through the progress of the RFP. So I will my screen up here. And Sue's going to run us through the RFP schedule. And then we'll go through the cash flow. Can you guys see?
All set, Ian?
Yeah, can you see? Yep, go ahead.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. We have received 6 proposals that the team is in the process of reviewing. The bids came in on the 22nd. As you can see, this is our timeline. We have distributed items to those that are on the committee. And we've given this week, and we're going to convene sometime on the 2nd next week to discuss and shortlist the commissioning folks. Interviews to take place, as you can see, on 5/10. Communication shortly thereafter on the 12th. And then we'll be working with the Concord folks to do the procurement contract piece of this work. We thought it was important that we keep on this timeline so that they can be on board when the DD drawings come out and start doing their work immediately. So,
can you remind us? Sorry, Pat, I have a question.
Okay.
I forgot I wasn't running the meeting. Don't just all talk. Excuse me, Susan, can you remind us who's on the committee?
yes, myself, Ian, John Harris, Gail Dowd, another Ian from the Concord group. I'm not placing his
Rames.
last name. Thank you.
Yep. Jared Stanton.
Okay, Jared, and then John Cutler from our team is helping to do some data analysis based on the information that we've received to help with our process.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a really good response from the commissioning community. I think we had 18 entities that picked up bid documents, and we anticipated some of those were exterior commissioning agents versus MEP fire protection commissioning agents. So some of those groups paired up and put in proposals. So as Sue mentioned, we had 6 proposers that we're going through this week, and we want to get 2 to 3 companies in place to interview on the 10th.
Thanks, Ian. Matt, do you have a question?
I do. Thanks, Pat. Can we see the list of those 6 bidders?
I don't have them handy at the moment, but we can certainly get that information to you, Matt.
Thank you, Sue.
Yep.
And then, so that committee will be will be doing the interviews and then selecting or recommending to the full committee here an option, or how does it work from here?
Ian, is that,
We're gonna-
it goes
we're
to
gonna make a-
executive or?
Yeah, we're gonna make a recommendation to the town manager, so to Carrie, so we'll write a recommendation letter to Carrie. And then I think that office will accept it and move forward with the contracting process.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, project cash flow review.
So this is the cash flow. Not too much has changed since last looked at it last month. The only difference is Hill processed an invoice for $67,000 for services in December, January, March. So the total bill to date is 1.3 million. And we have invoices in hand from SMMA, just covering the balance of the feasibility and schematic design, and then their first billing for design development as well. We just needed to sort through how those were split up. So we're working on that with them, and we'll get those processed as well. And here's the cash flow chart. So we're down here in 2022. So this is the projection through the end of the project. Any questions? No.
Ian, I'm wondering if, as you all identify your people like the commissioning agents, if it's appropriate that we just before the meeting get a list of who those are. I understand that you all will be making a recommendation to the town and that it's the town that makes the decision, but it might be helpful for us to be kept in the loop of who you're talking to, and I'm wondering if that's an appropriate thing to do.
Okay. I guess maybe I'm not following the request here. Just understand who else we're going to be contracting with this year.
Well, for instance, for the commissioning agents, you've identified 6, and I knew that you guys were in the process of doing that.
Yep.
But just maybe, as Matt said, wondering about if we could see the who they are, if we could get that sort of upfront.
Sure. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Ian, do you want me just to list off who we got?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. Sullivan, Horizon, Colliers. I have to open 1 or 2 of them, sorry, just because they don't have their names on them.
Is Sullivan RW Sullivan?
Yes, it
Who's
is.
Sullivan.
Yep.
Okay.
RW Sullivan, Harris Energy Solutions, CES Consulting Engineers Services, and AKF. Okay, so we have RW Sullivan, Horizon, Colliers, Harris, CES, which again stands for Consulting Engineers Services, and AKF.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't have it in front of me.
All right.
You. Okay, so unless there are any other questions about that, can we move on to the design development progress review?
Absolutely. So we
Thank
have
you, Lauren.
thank you, Pat. We have a few new people with us today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I am going to warn you, I flipped the agenda a little bit to put the MEP first. And we did take out 1 or 2 slides from the draft we sent out. So I know those of you who flipped through it might see that there's really nice design stuff coming, but We wanted to get through some of the engineering. We've been working a lot with your town, with your facilities, with the water department, with the Board of Health agents, talking about the septic. There's been an awful lot of progress on the drawings and on the project. And we just wanted to give you sort of an overview of where we are, and we're progressing the design. And I'll let each team member introduce themselves as they get to it. And I'm just going to share my screen. Second here. All right. So as I mentioned, I sort of shifted the agenda just a tiny bit to put the MEP up front. And then we'll talk about some floor plan refinements, the interior direction, some site plan refinements, and some updates we've had to geotech and traffic. All right, so I think we're going to start with Chase.
Yes, hello. So I'd like to say that Lorraine meant that she wanted to highlight the MEP systems, not just get through them. But so my name is Chase. I'm a mechanical engineer with SMA. We've recently been meeting with your facilities group and also getting some of their input. But want to start with the air handling units. So these are what's going to be working for the cafeteria, auditorium, and gym. We're going to be doing a DX, which is a refrigerant-based system for heating and cooling. We're going to be using mixed air in these spaces because they have fairly high ventilation requirements that are also closer to their heating and cooling requirements, which makes air handling units a great choice. And they will be on emergency power since they are providing the heating to the spaces they're providing, not due to life safety, but due to freeze protection against for the sprinkler heads. And so that is the air handling units. Next up, we're going to talk about the energy recovery units. This is, everything's getting mixed these days, but this is also the DOAS units, or the direct outdoor air systems. These are going to provide 100% outside air to the classrooms, the admin area, and basically all the other spaces that weren't the gym, the cafeteria, and the auditorium. We're looking at a couple of different technologies to do the energy recovery. One is Superblock, which is shown up in the top left. And this is a technology that can get 90% energy recovery. Another is we're looking at wheels, energy recovery wheels, more the tried and true path. And these have about 75% energy recovery, but they also do have a defrost cycle, which unfortunately takes away some of their energy efficiency in the winter. And so these are two great technologies that help decrease energy use, help getting us closer to those net zero goals, and also making it so that when we are using all electric heat, it doesn't put such a pain on the pocketbook. And so these are great technologies that that save energy and still provide great air quality and everything else. Oh, I see we have a question.
Well, I have a couple questions, Lorraine. I don't know though. I know we're trying to set up a sustainability subcommittee meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know how detailed we want to get today. Should we table them until?
No, I'm happy to take any questions if that's how Pat wants to run it. And yes, we are trying to set up a meeting. I apologize that we're still working on dates here. I think Chase wanted to give an overview, but I think it's important if you have any questions, it can help set us up better for the sustainability subcommittee meeting.
I agree.
Well,
Sure.
so I just have two questions. I'd love to hear more about the return air on those are just on the central for the larger spaces, right? As compared to the classrooms where you've got dedicated separate ventilation.
Yes. So, yeah.
So I mean, now or in the future, I'd love to hear more about those details. And I'm also just wondering about with the public bid process and like going with a super block product, how does that work? Because that's a very special product, and how do you get multiple equals?
Both great questions. So for the return air question, the gym, auditorium, and cafeteria that have air handling units will have return air. I think most of those units are ending up somewhere 50% outside air, based on the ventilation calcs and the heating and cooling load calcs. It varies per space. And so those will have return air, whereas the energy recovery units, there is no return air. So on the energy recovery units, there is 100% outside air going into all of the classrooms, the admin, and everything else. And then there is also 100% exhaust air. So we're removing the air generally from the corridors, from the bathrooms, everywhere else, running it through the wheel or the block. And that gets us the energy recovery, but also gives us 100% outside air for ventilation. So I think that answers the first one. The second one,
Sorry,
yeah.
Dave. Yeah, no, thank you for that answer. But so it'll be 50% mixed air.
I can pull up my calcs. I think one unit is
That's fine.
3,000, 5,000, so that's 60%. Another one is, I think, 3,000, 6,000, so that's 50%. And I can't remember what the third one is, but they vary in that 40 to 60 range. And we can go over that more. Again, that's more in the weeds. We'll get there on the sustainability subcommittee. So the second one, the energy recovery units and superblock, there are 3 different manufacturers. I'm working with them on another project, actually working with getting specific selections from all 3 manufacturers so that we know that it can go to a fair bid. The other thing I've set up in the specs previously was allowing for dual wheel versus superblock and making it a little bit more of a performance spec of 90% energy recovery. Because dual wheel can usually get to that number as well. And if a manufacturer wants to bid dual wheel against superblock, we're open to entertaining those things because the major goal is to be getting more efficient units that save more energy.
Great. Thank you, Chase.
Sure. And Heather.
Thank you. Okay. Be prepared for the other end of the spectrum because my question is much less educated than Matt's. So here's the dumb question for this slide. Defrost cycle. I'm going to assume that it helps it defrost in the winter, but can you explain for the uninitiated what exactly that means? And I guess more importantly, if we don't have it, if we go with this super block because it's high energy, what does that mean to us that it has no defrost cycle?
Great. Yeah. So defrost cycle. So the wheels are not just getting the heat from temperature. They're also getting it from humidity. And so when they're doing that with the cold entering air temperatures, there can be a frost buildup on the wheel, which then makes it so that it doesn't work quite as well. And so wheel manufacturers program in a defrost cycle, which basically prevents energy transfer coming and air just bypasses around the wheel while the wheel warms up and gets rid of any frost buildup. And so this is something that, although essential for the wheel to function well, does mean that while this is happening, you're bypassing the wheel and not getting 75% energy recovery. And this obviously often happens when it's really cold out, which means there's a large delta in temperature, like 10 degrees outside and 7 degrees in the building. And so you're missing out on all of that energy that you could be recovering during that time. And so the super block, since it isn't using the wheel technology, it doesn't have a spot for frost buildup. And so that's where it's able to eliminate that and is therefore able to claim more energy efficiency.
Okay, so not having it doesn't hurt us. It's the reason why it's more energy efficient.
Yes.
So is it therefore generally more expensive? Is that why you wouldn't just automatically do that?
With these things, generally, the more efficient you get, the more expensive you get. But that is looking at a first cost situation. When you look at life cycle, which we will, you can usually find that it works out very well, especially with electric heat situations.
Awesome. Thank you for ERU 101.
Sure.
Heather, I totally appreciate your question. I have the same one. So a lot of us who are not experts in this area.
Exactly. Oh, let me take my hand down, sorry.
Charlie,
That's good.
Yes, I just have a question that I think we can answer or deal with in this at the subcommittee level. It has to do with the impact of 90% versus 75% on our energy numbers. It'd be good to know what that really means in terms of building performance. So you don't need to answer that now.
Yeah.
That would be good to know.
Yeah, just as the quick answer, our sustainability team will be running their analysis, and we'll be getting EUI numbers for different systems and different performances, and we can have them run those two numbers and get you an EUI difference.
I have one comment, or possibly it's a question, but Superblock, I think, is fairly commonly run in northern climates. I think it's a Canadian company. I think it is.
Montreal.
So, I would think that, it would be well adapted here from a defrost issue point of view, but maybe someone should think about that a little bit. To what extent are we really impacted by defrost requirements?
Yeah, and it's a good comment. I will note that because they are a higher cost, they were not as popular a couple of years back here in the Boston market. It's mainly with these transitions to net zero that energy savings has become more valuable, and also the transition to all electric, that the utility costs have gone up, that the life cycle works out a little bit better. But yes, Charles, we can definitely talk more in the subcommittee. Thank you.
Steve,
Hi, yeah, before we move on, could you talk more about the arrangement of heat pumps and fan coil units? I know.
I think if Lorraine wants to transition to the next slide, we can definitely talk about the heat pumps. So do you mind if we present this, and I can follow up if you have any additional questions?
Yeah, you've got 3 air handlers, right? And I just was wondering what your arrangement was for heat pumps. And I see the wall mounted units, those wall mounted units, what is the plan for visual of inside? I'm assuming you'll have ducted fan coils to every classroom, but if you could go through that, that'd be great.
Sure. So the VRF system is with providing heating and cooling, as Steve just introduced, and we'll be having the condensing units outside, the indoor units inside. So those units up in the top picture are what's outside, and some of the units on the bottom are what are going to be inside the building. We're using this system. It provides all the heating and cooling. It is also all electric, so that's the major draw here. It's more efficient than electric resistance heat. If any of you have been familiar or tried to avoid having electric resistance heat, VRF systems are generally between 2 and 5 times more efficient than that, and depending on the outdoor temperature. So that's why we're going this route. And starting to talk about the internal layouts, we're going to be using a mix of the cassettes, the ducted, and the wall mount units. In the classrooms, we were actually starting to look at using the cassette units. The thought there is that with the cassette units, you can get sound levels down at about 30 dB, which is great for classroom settings. And additionally, with the reduction of ductwork, it allows for higher ceilings. And so anything we can be doing to help architecture keep the ceilings as high as possible is something that we're looking at doing. And with this, we will decouple the ventilation, which just means the ventilation comes in separate than the heating and cooling, bringing the ventilation into the back of the classroom, and then putting the heating and cooling in the middle of the space, kind of towards the exterior. Some of the spaces we want to combine together. We'd use ducted units, because the other benefit here is that with the cassettes, we'd be able to simply recirc in the space. And the cassettes are now allowing for MERV 13 filters, which also makes it so that we can have plenty of filtration in the classroom spaces. And I think that's a bit of an introduction there. It also allows thermostats in every single classroom as well, along with most zones having their own control. Charles, you have another question?
Yes, again, for the subcommittee, I just want to make sure that we're dealing with the design issues around the way the supply air and return air is going to be structured into these classrooms, into the ceilings, and whether we're going to be heating that space that's in between the tiles and the top of the concrete ceiling. I just, I also want to know whether we're going to be, whether heating that interstitial, I guess they call it interstitial space, makes sense. And last, on the design of the return air, to what extent is that going to be placed in a way that's going to be sufficient to get really good ventilation effectiveness in terms of mixing air at the occupant level? So all of that stuff, I think we need to get to in a detailed way. And we've never reviewed this before, and I think it's a very important topic. If we have a ventilation system, spend a lot of money on it, and it doesn't really provide ventilation air to where the student is sitting, that's, becomes kind of a problem. So I think, again, we need to go through this detailed stuff at the subcommittee level. And I just want you to know that I think this is very important to us.
Wonderful. I thoroughly enjoy people having a large focus on HVAC systems, and we'll love to talk with you more in the subcommittee. We are designing that, and we can get numbers together for getting the ventilation to the space. We are looking at using colder temperature than the space for the ventilation so that we get the ventilation factor of 1, and not doing the ceiling supply of hot air and getting the 0.8 factor. I think we did VE out any displacement ideas early in this project, so we're not looking in that direction at the moment. And then for the heating of the interstitial or the plenum space, we don't specifically heat that, but the return air rises and is warm, and so that air is heated by the space as it returns. And so it's not specifically heated. Yes, work on the transfer design and the return ducts so that we do get the mixing and that we get the ventilation we want. But yes, we can chat more about that in the subcommittee.
And then the other sub question is, how does the supply air interface with the fan coil unit? I think there was some discussion that Andy had with us about integrating those two, feeding the fan coil units with ducted supply air, coming out of the VAV unit and all that kind of stuff. So that would be helpful to really kind of get down to the nitty gritty on that.
Okay. Yep. I think Lorraine has been coordinating, and we're working on a date for that, and we'll definitely follow up with more on that in that subcommittee meeting. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
I've got one other tiny little comment. I mean, we had a discussion about the Lincoln situation. I know Martine brought that up as a good example of how to get, how a low amount of, or a relatively lower amount of CFM can still provide a great result. And the interesting thing about the Lincoln situation is that the return air ducts are basically at the floor. So when you have a return air duct at the floor, you're sucking that air right through the occupied space. And that's becomes an interesting comparison point for us, but it's significantly different in design than what we have. So again, getting back to this ventilation effectiveness thing, I think we need to think about that.
Sure, we can definitely definitely chat more about that. There are various designs that help improve the ventilation effectiveness and make sure to get the ventilation air to where we want it, which is to the people. And so we can definitely talk about that more.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, this is just looking at the gymnasium, looking at fans and fabric duct. The fans, HVLS fans, is high volume, low speed. Basically, by making a really large fan you can move a lot more air without using much motor energy. And so putting those up at the ceiling. Another thing we often do in gyms is looking at fabric ductwork. The appeal here is that similar to what we were just chatting about with Charles, is that you can get a more uniform airflow, having not just diffusers in a few spaces, but getting air all along the gym. And the other benefit here is that you can put the ductwork higher up, and so it can be in the structure. And so this gives as much play area and uninterrupted space in the gym as possible. And I think that is it for the HVAC portion. Move on to Anthony.
Thank you, Chase. So my name is Anthony Jimenez. I'm an electrical engineer at SMA, and I'll be talking about the electrical system today for Concord, starting with the emergency generator. We will require emergency generator for the school, strictly because of the emergency life safety load you see on top of your screen here. Egress lighting, exit signs, the fire pump, and the fire alarm systems, the BDA system throughout the school. In addition, the design team is looking to incorporate the following loads onto optional standby. There will be a memo distributed after this meeting that lists this out, what is included on the generator, is not included on the generator for your review and final approval. But right now we're planning for freeze protection, as Chase mentioned, which is a large load because of the all-electric school. Teledata, building management, security, the telephone and communication systems, the septic system, the elevator, kitchen, refrigeration, freezers, and then a handful of receptacles throughout the nurse, admin, and custodian area. Matt, go ahead if you have a question now.
Thanks, Anthony. Just quick about the freeze protection. I mean, it looks like based on the slide, and maybe it's the next one, it's about 60% of the load. And
Yeah.
I think the initial cost estimates that we saw were around $500,000 for this unit. So there's obviously a large price tag associated with this detail. And I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I guess I'd raise the question to the design team of how much freeze protection we need. I mean, we're focusing on a high performance enclosure, low air infiltration, lots of insulation. How much do we need freeze protection? Because it would be a long, very cold outage to get below 33 degrees here in this building.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Oh, sorry. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, you're right. A large portion of it is heat protection at the moment. Unfortunately, one of the causalities of having an all-electric system is it's sort of an all or nothing type approach. You can't really. It's challenging to put only parts of it on generator. It doesn't really quite work that way. And the other consideration would be that Chase could probably tell you more about it than I could, but I think below 50 degrees is really the danger zone for freezing. Water does freeze at 32 degrees below, but I don't know, he kind of explained it again better than I could. But that once you're in the 40 to 50 range, you're really that's where you're concerned.
I think maybe what we do is we add this to the agenda for the Sustainable Subcommittee, and I think when you see the memo that Anthony has prepared, we'll issue it after this meeting. We wanted to wait in case something else came up. We want to have a discussion with you about what's on the generator and how much, etc. So I think this is more to come, but I will add that to the agenda item, Matt.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, and that being said, though, I do want to make the point right now that we did carry a 400 kW generator for SD, and it has gone up 100 kW now to 500. But the size of the engine is still the same, which is the significant portion of the generator. So it's definitely an increase, but in the grand scheme of things, a fractional increase at this time. So yeah, as we consider the loads, if we can bring it down, that'd be great. But between 400 and 500 will be the same liter size engine. So it will only be so much savings if we knock it down to 450 or back to 400. I think it's an important part of the design to consider when it is an important part of the building. But continuing on, oh, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, just a quick one. When we get to the design subcommittee, when we'll do more review of the electrical stuff, it'd be interesting to see a cost breakout. If you have a view as to what the cost breakout is for the components of the electrical system, that would be nice to have, if it's handy, if you happen to have it.
For the whole electrical system,
the infrastructure for the building, not the lighting, but the infrastructure, the switch gear, you've got the generator and so forth, all that kind of stuff.
we can do the best we can to break that out. Yeah.
Yeah, just the best you can. That's right. Yeah.
Sure. Let me just jot it down. Okay. Yeah, we absolutely will do that. And I'll mention, yeah, no problem. And I'll mention now, in addition to the generator, we're looking for it's called a level 2 sound attenuated enclosure. It's weather protective and it helps reduce the noise the generator makes when it is running. There are Concord bylaws that do limit the amount of noise they want to hear at the street level, as well as the school right next to it. To further meet those requirements, we're going to also look at installing a sound barrier around the generator as well, just a tall wall, a tall concrete wall essentially. We're in the midst of designing that with our acoustic engineers, but that is the intent at the moment. Steve, go ahead.
I have just two general questions that I don't know if you could answer them now or it doesn't really matter soon. One is the fuel storage for the generator is going to be on grade next to this in the back loading dock area. Is that right? Or is this on the roof? Or
it'll be a natural gas generator, so there will be no fuel storage.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay,
yeah.
so that lends to my next question is the load calculations for natural gas usage for the building and the load calculation for electrical usage for the building. Have those gone to the utility companies to request availability and promissory notes that they'll serve?
Yes, yep, both of those have gone out. We've had some response from the gas company, and electrical has had some initial response. We're still working through them to get some details, but yeah, they're both aware of the loads and the projects.
Who would be the natural gas supplier? I know Concord Municipal is the electric.
Luis, do you remember?
It's National Grid.
National Grid. Okay.
It's National Grid.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So I mentioned the sound wall barrier, and then the last thing is a 10-foot exhaust stack. The intent will not be to build a wall above the exhaust stack if we can, but we'll get there as the design continues. And the last point I'll mention too, just to remind you, the memo will be coming out that does explain the generator a little more in detail with loads and sizing and some of our strategies to try to limit the HVAC equipment that will be on during an event of emergency. We can't take it off of it. That's where a big portion of our diversity comes from, but we can limit what turns on and off at the same time, which will help a lot. So continue on to lighting. So the school will use a mixture of linears and recessed lighting throughout the schools, as well as high bay fixtures in the gymnasium. In the classrooms, we'll be using direct, indirect lighting. It'll be two, so depending on the size of the room, but a number of linear strips that are, they're parallel from the exterior wall will be our design. And there'll be, and then throughout the rest of the spaces, there'll be a mixture of the recessed and also some surface mounted and some downlights that kind of incorporate the architectural vision while meeting the lighting levels that we require. You'll see some ideas of it throughout the renderings in the rest of the presentation. And yeah, the high bays and the gyms are pretty standard. And then for lighting control, what we discussed before, we'll be doing a fully addressable system for the school. It will be, it will have, in the classrooms, we'll have a switch at the front of the room, as well as a teacher's control station that will have presets. We'll be able to dim and set different, scene 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. We'll coordinate with your school, as well as you guys will have full control over changing those as the years develop, as the program develops. There will be aux sensor control, time clock control. We'll utilize daylight harvesting as often as we can. It will be fully integrated into different systems like the fire alarm, the AV, and have demand response ready system available. And we also discussed before that it'll be a hybrid of wired and wireless to help, avoid hard to reach places, to not have to replace batteries in the gymnasium, for instance. And there will be a building management. It will be an online system that's pretty user friendly. Will be our intent for the basis design. So the facilities team can log in and make edits and monitor the system. It will also be tied to the building management system for secondary review and load management. And you go to the next slide, Lorraine, or that might actually be yeah, that's the last one for electrical. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I can pass it on to Luis.
Morning, everyone. I'm Luis Moreno. I'm plumbing and fire protection engineer with SMMA. On the first slide, it shows the water service. We had a flow test done recently for the school, and it was determined to.
I'm
to
sorry,
require-
Luis, can I stop you for a moment? There's a lot of
Yes.
interference, Luis. I don't know if you can take out your headphones or there's a lot of interference.
Better now?
Yeah, not really.
Mhm.
I know we talked yesterday and this didn't happen, so.
What about now? Is it better?
Not great. So maybe we can, if it's not getting any better, maybe we can just be a little briefer and louder if you can, if you don't mind.
Okay. What about now? Is it getting better?
A little better, yeah.
I apologize. I don't know what happened. It was working fine. So I was saying for the water service after the flow test, water booster pump is required. It's going to be a small one, a 3 horsepower each pump. It will be duplex with variable speed each pump. For the fire service, we will meet the fire department requirements with the double check valve assembly. A fire pump will be required. It will be a 500 gallons per minute fire pump. The fire service will be wet zones, dry sprinkler zones for the loading docks and roll-up door areas. So the building will be fully sprinklered. Every zone will meet the requirements for the fire department as per meeting. Okay. On the plumbing faucets, we had a meeting with facilities, so it was determined that the lavatory faucets will be battery operated, and they will be working between 0.35 GPM, 0.5 GPM for water conservation. And the sink faucets will be manual, and they will have the aerators at the end, and it will be 1.5 GPM flow. And these basically are the type of faucet that you'll see. They made the suggestion to use Sloan as basis of design, and that's going to be scheduled as per basis of design. For plumbing fixtures, water closets and urinals will be low flow fixtures, and they will be 1.28 gallons per flush. They will have the sensor operated battery powered flushometer valves. They will be exposed. As you can see, we have the 2 models right here that are available, basically. So, any questions on fixtures or in plumbing or fire protection?
Thank you, Luis. So just so you know, we did have meetings with Melissa and some of your water department. We've talked through some of the fixtures. They do have a standard for the bottle filler that they've asked us to provide for outside for the drinking fountain. So we are putting together a memo that will go to the committee because that will need a proprietary vote. And there are a few other things such as the keying system and the Johnson Medicis control system, the BMS system, where the town would like to stay standard on what you already have in place. So we're preparing a memo that will list out all the items that will be required for a vote of the building committee for proprietary and get supporting documentation along with that. One of those items, as I mentioned, is the exterior drinking fountain that the water department has asked us to include. I do see Charlie has his hand up.
I just wanted to make one quick request before we move to the next topic. And it has to do with the acoustic on the roof issue. And I think that's a pretty complex topic. And it seems to be something that to me, it falls in the sustainability category. Noise is a serious sustainability issue. And we ought to, I think, look at it in the sustainability subcommittee and, try to think through, what makes sense at that level before the full committee gets involved in all the numbers and the details and so forth.
Charlie, when you say look at, what do you mean? Like what the?
Well, I think
solution?
Lorraine was doing, coming up with the numbers and the setbacks from the rooftop units to neighboring properties and the extent to which noise is going to travel through the trees and, all this kind of good stuff. I took a look at the system over at the Umbrella with Jerry Wedge and listened to it on the roof. And, it is an interesting set of problems. And I think that you've got, number one, you've got noise, which is, the simply understanding how much noise, you've got. And that's a complicated calculation all by itself. And then the extent to which that noise travels is kind of the second part of the question. And, we've got a $700,000 investment. So somebody needs to take a look at this stuff and sort it out and decide whether we do or don't need that fencing, that acoustical fencing on the roof. I don't think that decision's been made one way or the other, and it's not on.
I think it was determined based on the. I think it was determined based on the ambient noise calculations that it was required. So they were looking at, I don't know, Lorraine, you had like 14 different options at the
15 options.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact number. It was a lot.
You think we made that decision when we had that conversation?
I think it's made for us. I think it has to be done.
Who made the decision?
Well, the calculations tell us. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Yeah, sure. So Acentech did an environmental noise analysis at the property line. Ran the 24-hour cycle to get the ambient sound at different points, and have then analyzed it against our current design and have said that we are not meeting the decibel level at the property line without any acoustic attenuation. So what they provided back to us was a list of sort of a laundry list of 15 different methods. The last one being the roof screens, but most of them being mechanical attenuation in order to dampen that sound so that we meet that level at the property line. So Chase has been going back and forth with Acentech looking at what those options are, and they'll have to reanalyze the design for us to say, yes, you do comply with DEP and you are meeting it. So they put the roof screens as the last option on that list, just because there were other methods that we could take into account. But I'm happy to go through that with you at the Sustainable Subcommittee meeting. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just think we should go through it. I don't, necessarily want to revisit it, but I'd like to see it.
Sure. I did send out that ambient study, so that was distributed to the building committee. So you should have received that.
I didn't get that. I didn't receive that. I didn't receive that unless I missed it somehow. So sorry about that.
I can resend it after the meeting, Dawn, to you guys if you'd like. Let me make a note to myself.
That's fine. I remember receiving it. I get mail in 2 different mailboxes, so I was trying to pull it up, but I do remember it coming through, Lorraine. But feel free to send it again.
I'll just resend it after.
Yep.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate that.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. So we're going to move on to some floor plan refinements. I'm not sure if this is Keith or Bill.
Yeah, Lorraine, I'll speak to our deck. So.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So good morning again, everybody. You may recall the last time we were with you, I believe it was March 24th, and we presented to you what we identified as plan reconciliation, right? Adjustment of the footprint of the building in order to hit the area reductions identified within the schematic design phase. Since that time, and you may also recall that we had just come out of a series of educational programming sessions with the educational leadership team. We have been working within the established reconciled footprint to refine the floor plan, make sure we incorporate nuances from the educational leadership team, and also integrate the engineering systems that you've just heard about, right? Coordinate the structural frame, locate the units, make sure we have reasonable duct distribution strategies, all those things. This series of refinements, hopefully this plan is quite familiar to you at this point. We're not making major changes. We're working within the balance of the footprint. I would say that the areas that we made fine-tuning adjustments with the leadership team, we're exploring the extent of open learning within the media center, you know, the capacity of media, number of books, things like that. We're looking at layout within the administrative suite in terms of how people enter the school and how they are able to interact with senior leadership, the way that the nursing suite operates, the guidance suite, all of those things are in here. We work through the classrooms on a regular basis, on a detailed basis, identifying where the teaching areas, all those things. The music room, we're looking at how to incorporate equipment storage, how to access the stage. We're looking at the functionality of the loading dock and distribution of kitchen equipment. And again, all of those are very fine-grained adjustments that have been incorporated in those plans. So I don't think that we need to spend time today doing that. If anybody had specific questions, we can ask about it. Lorraine, you can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that we did on the upper level was advance the art suite. You can see that, that's that kind of yellow or mustard color up there. So we did a little bit of plan refinement there to find out, incorporate a common storage area, have the appropriate number of kilns. The other thing we did is we looked through all the special education spaces and made sure that each of them was uniquely outfitted for their purpose. We've had several discussions with Lori and Justin and their team, hearing their feedback, providing a response, and we're tweaking all of this. And you know, in some ways, it's like I define it, it's the skeleton of the building, right? And then it gives the opportunity to hang the muscles and the tissue and the organs. And that's what our mechanical, electrical, structural team have been talking about. At the same time, we're exploring opportunities to advance the interior character and the interior language of the building. And that's really what we want to talk to you about today. Lorraine, maybe just the next slide will show you the lower level. So again, just finite, you know, refinement of this plan, which also it leans toward site development, and Michael will share some of that with you. But I want to really explore our interior development, which is what you'll see here. So, you know, one of the things that we spoke about very early in the project was the social and emotional needs of the early adolescent, looking for a strong connection to the natural landscape, looking for the opportunity to utilize resources wisely, and integrating the history of Concord, right? And so you'll see how all of those things are coming to life through the advancement of the project. One important piece that we talked about during about the social and emotional development of the early adolescent is providing opportunities for students to be in the middle of activities, for them to be able to occupy an edge, whether that's in an eddy condition or in a screened space condition. So these are just a series of diagrams that suggest how you might accommodate, how you would build space to accommodate those different usages. Lorraine, we go to the next, please. When you look for a natural metaphor to seek inspiration or a model, we think that the stream is an interesting place to look. And you guys may recall the small diagram on the upper left that we showed you. I think during the feasibility stage, to feasibility study, to show how the various programming spaces are connected with this circulation spine. And then off of each of them, there are little eddies or gathering areas that have special functions. And so you can see this is an image, obviously, of a stream that illustrates how, as the stream works its way through the forest, you have these kind of unique conditions at the edge. And that this is an opportunity, this circulation stream that goes through the building, and you'll see how we're building upon that. We'll go to the next slide. And sometimes, you know, there are more pronounced areas where there's maybe a bend in the river. And so, whereas maybe the Learning Commons is a quite quiet instance of this, the cafeteria, the auditorium entrance provide opportunity for a little greater differentiation of space, and yet all kind of interconnected. We go to the next, please, Lorraine. Another metaphor that we thought is appropriate to look at is the forest edge, right? So the opportunity to inhabit the edge, to feel a little bit protected, to have the open vista, and then also how that kind of develops a language of screening and also vista, and maybe one more. And so we reviewed these themes and concepts with Lori and Justin and their team, and they saw lots of appropriate kind of ideas behind here. And then even you can see, you know, if you're just behind a screen, you still have opportunity to see through it, but you feel a little bit of kind of protection and maintaining views. Next, please. And so we just want to work our way through a series of spaces. We've developed the entrance lobby. We're looking at the media center, the cafeteria, the team commons, and this is just a way to begin to explore and identify the interior language of the building. So this is the auditorium of the, the lobby immediately to the east of the entrance suite. So just off the view to the left is the main entrance and the administrative suite. And then down the corridor is you can see the 6th grade, and above it 7th, and there's a stair tower to the lower level below. What we've done is look to incorporate these eddies within this area. And another key thing that came out of our educational programming sessions is looking for opportunities to display artwork and the work of students. We go to the next, please. And so we're beginning to develop these series of eddies that are still very much a part of the lobby. They kind of seize upon the opportunity of the transparency of the lobby to see the landscape beyond, and yet provide small gathering spaces, opportunity for art display, and begin to kind of double down on the circulation system as a place to host informal gathering and informal learning for students to occupy, or even you know, in for a public function, you know, if somebody is attending a performance or an athletic event, there's this opportunity. We go to the next. I also want to say that we're working within the finish palette that was described and defined in schematic design, and we're very conscious of the data, you know, how much special material we can buy and where that goes. So again, just another view of how we create small, more private gathering spaces and maximize the transparency of the lobby. We'll go to the next, please. And just a series of views about these. I also want to say that we have received some feedback from the design subcommittee. We're looking at introducing some refinements, maybe a few more organic forms within here, but essentially this is we're headed in the right direction here. Next. If you were to enter the building and then turn to the right, you'd go past the media center and work your way down to the cafeteria and the auditorium. here we're really trying to put the media center and learning on display, right? So transparency through the media center to the cafeteria terrace and the landscape beyond. So here in the middle of the image, you can see a transparent display. It could be student work. It could be a relevant book or show, highlight some topic. But in the foreground, you see the circulation desk and then low stacks beyond. We go to the next image, please. And again, as we're moving now toward, maybe you can see in the lower right-hand corner, the footprint of the building, and as you migrate through with view. So again, the media center is on your left, and you start to get a peek of the cafeteria beyond. This stair that you see in the center of the image is an open stair that leads you up to the art classrooms in the second floor. And so provides just another way down. We expect that students who are traveling from the upper level of the classroom block to the cafeteria, gymnasium, media center might utilize this stair as well as coming down the stair tower. We go to the next, please. Now we've advanced just a little bit further. We're almost looking back at the media center. You can see the stair rising to the second floor and the art suite. And again, that screening device similar to the trees in the forest, right? Providing just a little bit of both transparency and concealment through there. We're looking to integrate, again, some informal seating areas. One of the things that we heard from Lori and Justin is to the extent that we can integrate some more private areas for eating. So we within the plan of the cafeteria, we do have some booths, we have some banquettes, we have some screening devices that just break down the scale of that room and enhance the dining experience. We go to the next, please. Again, another view of that. You can see just the view here shows a peek of the transparency to that stair. You can see the banquettes kind of in the right foreground and the peek to the landscape beyond through that glazing. Next. And now more kind of fully in the middle of the cafeteria. Here's the banquettes and the screening device that I described. We're using these to create space and character. We're also integrating functional aspects. So, there'll be condiments and microwaves and things like that. So this millwork device that really is about creating spatial definition, we're also incorporating some functionality and having them do double duty. Go to the next, please. And then this is a view just against the landscape. This is the southern perimeter of the cafeteria. The configuration of the classrooms on the second floor gives us the opportunity to raise the structure over the southernmost portion of the cafeteria, and we're looking to maximize that with higher glazing, additional daylight, and we have carefully calibrated amounts of special finishes. But this is the wood ceiling. You may or may not recall that we made an agreement at the end of schematic design to reduce the amount of this, but we're looking to judiciously place it, right? So here we're using it against the southern edge of the cafeteria, almost to amplify the specialness of this place. Go to the next. And now back in the media center, again, fairly open space. You can see we're using the east and west walls for full height book storage and the collection. And within the center of the media center, lower shelving, increased visibility. We're really trying to take advantage of the view through to the landscape as much as possible. There's a small gathering space just in the kind of deeper in the image on the right-hand side. We may have a peek at that. I don't know. Can we go next, Lorraine? Okay, not in that one. And so now this is a team commons I suspect you all remember that a team is identified by 4 classrooms and 2 small group rooms, as well as a common area. The 2 center classrooms have the ability with operable partitions to open to the team commons, and then also an opportunity to open to one another. But this is showing, again, that filtered and layered sense of space where you can see the corridor in the immediate foreground, the team commons, which is surrounded by some millwork. In the 7th and 8th grade, there are no lockers. This is an illustration of the 6th grade where we're providing lockers for each student. And again, you just get this sense of layering and transparency, the team commons in the front, the classrooms beyond, and then you can even see a view to the landscape beyond that. One of the things that we're also doing is working to use the building as a teaching tool, opportunities for exposed structure. You can see the pendant lighting that was discussed as part of the engineering discussion. So we're really looking to kind of, very energy conscious, but, maximize the potential of each element introduced to the building to create a unique learning environment. I think we have one final slide, Lorraine. So this is within a classroom looking toward the team commons. The operable partition is in its open position here. You can see the connectivity between the classroom and the team commons. There would be an opportunity, and I think we'll illustrate that for you in a future meeting, is on the right-hand side of the screen. That's a solid operable partition. That also can be opened, and now you have connectivity between those 2 classrooms and the team commons. So I would say just the next step is that we're using these images as a springboard to both explore and confirm the interior character of the building, and the spaces that we have yet to illustrate are the auditorium and the gymnasium. We're doing good work on the auditorium, working with confirming the amount of seats and the acoustical nature of those. And I feel like we are, I don't feel like, I know that we are on target to kind of simultaneously integrate the engineering information and kind of create the character of the building that expresses the primary goals established right at the outset. So I know I worked my way through that a little quickly. We had a limited time today for this development, but I'm happy to take comments or answer any questions.
I love this building. I love the way it looks and the way it flows, and I'm not a middle school teacher. And so I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit about sort of the process or the iterative nature of, as you've been working through the designs, getting any input or feedback from the educators at the middle school.
Yes, so, and thank you for asking that. What Lori and Justin have been great to work with. What it's exactly that, Pat. It's iterative, right? So as we look for an opportunity, we will share our sketches with Lori and Justin in almost in a more informal way, that they'll give us their feedback. We'll say, hey, we heard you say this. Is this a correct interpretation of it? And they come back and they say, yeah, you got it about 80% right, but what about this? What about that? We go back and show them another image, and then we show that to the design subcommittee. They offer helpful feedback, and then it comes to this building committee. So we expect, in the next, I think, Lorraine, maybe in 2 weeks, we're looking to establish another meeting with Lori and Justin, share with them some further refinement, particularly of the auditorium and gymnasium. That will come forward to the design subcommittee, and then finally to this group again, just before the conclusion of it's the issuance of our design development pricing set in late May. I hope that answered the question. If not, I can try to expound upon it.
Well, thank you. No, it does. It definitely does. I'm wondering, Lori, if you can say a little bit to the committee about, I've been through this rodeo a few times, and I just want to be sure that the teachers are sort of involved in this process. Not that I think that they're going to be guiding the process, or but sort of have some kind of engagement in as the design is developing. And I
I think Keith kind of skipped over a big part of some of the work we've been, or that the way and how others are involved. So Ewing Cole was on site for 2 days recently, and we rotated through groups of teachers, staff, users of the building, like facilities. So by no means is it just me and Justin. Since then, since those meetings in March, we have had, I don't know, 12 hours, 15 hours of Zoom calls where it's never just me and Justin, it's whoever the participants are going to be. Just Monday, we had the music folks on to look at the auditorium again. Anyway, it's very iterative and very engaged with lots of the users actively giving feedback. So it is iterative, like Keith just said, because those folks will come in and say, well, I'd really like this, and oh, that's not going to work. And you and Cole and SMMA go back and process it and bring it back to us. So lots and lots and lots of engagement. He simplified it maybe more than he should have, is all.
Well, I assume there was a fair amount of engagement. I just think it's helpful for the committee to have that validated.
Yeah, thank you both for that clarification. I was trying to offer a streamlined definition of it, but we've had specific meetings around, a whole group of people about the auditorium, about the cafeteria, about the functionality of the loading dock, about the team commons, about special education. And we had focus meetings about each of those topics. And what I'm showing you here is the feedback of all of those meetings, looking to how to integrate that feedback of multiple constituents into a common language. So I thank you for the question, and Lori, thank you for the clarification on that.
Keith, I might just add, but we're not done, right? There's still so much design left to go. How we apply color, how furniture layers in, and that will definitely all bring in the educators.
I'll tell you that the thing that I'm hoping the educators have had a chance to weigh in on is, I love the image of the stream and the eddies and the spaces for kids to gather. I would like to feel comfortable that the educators think that's a great idea too. I know life in a middle school is different than life in any other place in the world. So that was what sparked my question, was the use of the spaces in the common spaces.
So I think Justin and I have been talking about doing an overview at the staff meeting next week with everyone, and we can bring this slide deck and be sure they give us feedback.
Great, thank you. Heather, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Is it a good time for just kind of general comments and questions on all this? Yeah, okay, I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so first of all, first I should tell you, I'll try not to talk too fast. My coffee that was supposed to be decaf was not, and me on caffeine is a dangerous thing. But I will try to be quick with this. I have a bunch of comments and questions. First, it's just amazing. I just have to share, this is so exciting to see. And I feel like we're getting to that point of the process that's really exciting for all of us. This stuff looks so great. And I just have to thank all of you who've worked on it. I know there was a lot of work in the design subcommittee, and the designers have all worked on this. I have run into middle school teachers recently on sidelines and other places who've said, oh my gosh, I was a part of those discussions and it's so cool and it's so exciting. They're so enthusiastic that I already feel like, wow, even the design process is kind of just raising morale and everything. So just such exciting work. Thank you. Some of the things, and I'm just going to share a little bit of kind of questions and comments, some of it positive, just so that you get feedback. I hope other people do too. One of them is, I love all of the wood accents and the natural accents throughout. I think that's just so great. I look at it and I feel myself like take a deep breath and calm down and feel like it's a relaxing space already. with that and the muted colors that I see. I know colors aren't a final thing here. But I love seeing those types of things throughout. So thank you for all that. I like the river flow concept and the small places. One question that I had, and I'll just kind of list them and then we can go back to them, was I know in the design subcommittee, Dawn brought this up, the idea of kind of curved lines and spaces going through. I love that idea and I want to add on to that, or maybe someone mentioned it then. I know at in Duxbury where Lori used to be, I remember touring that one and seeing the topography of the ocean on the floor. And I loved that idea. I would love to, you know, architecturally curved lines are expensive, but visually they're not as expensive. And I know we haven't designed, you know, the floor here is not it, but I would love to just kind of keep that on our radar of curved lines and spaces being kind of another relaxing aspect of being in a space. So I'd love to see that incorporated as much as possible throughout. And then I had a question on ceilings. I feel like at one point we discussed, are there going to be dropped ceilings or exposed elements in the ceilings? And I wasn't sure if that's something that's decided yet or not, or when we decide it. In some areas, I actually kind of like the idea of exposing things because it's interesting for kids, especially if it's a continuation of all the nice muted colors or something like that, but I don't know if that where that is. So that's a question.
So
I think that's all for now.
So if I might answer both of those, we are continuing to explore the integration of organic forms and curved lines. One of the things, just as part of the discipline of the process, we don't want to bring forward things to this committee that the design subcommittee or the educators haven't seen. So we're
absolutely, this is
a point in time, and this is information extracted from our last meeting with the design subcommittee. But we're doing those things and even looking for ways to maybe reflect you know, a river form within the flooring materials and things like that. We are showing. We do have limited amounts of exposed structure. Lorraine, I don't know if you go back and see the view of the team commons, but this one here. So you can see this is an area of exposed ceiling up in here.
Oh, is it? I couldn't tell. Okay.
Yeah, and we're proposing at this point that we just paint it all out white, and but that's the structural frame, the underside of the deck. You'll see some ductwork up there. You know, we're trying to. Some components of exposed systems can be quite attractive, but you need to control them and, you know, be careful about what you show. So we're trying to conceal the messy components of the systems within the ceiling and then expose the structure and some maybe ductwork and sprinkler systems. So that's really where that occurs. And it's interesting in some ways, when you decide to expose a structural frame or aspects of the mechanical distribution, you have to be careful about that. You know, it's not, you know, you got to detail it and install it in an orderly way so that it looks simple and, you know, exposed, but in fact, it's all carefully calibrated. So that's one area where we're really working to show that.
Terrific. Thank you. This is just, it's awesome. It looks great.
Thank you, Keith.
Lorian, it's 5 of 9. I want to be, you know, cognizant of everyone else's time. Do you want to go through this and you think we'll have time to do this and your next stuff? Okay, so let me rush through this. Good morning, everyone. Not rush. Let me update everyone here. So so when we met with the faculty and staff and administration a few weeks ago, there were sort of 5 main areas that we focused on. And most of them are still under development, especially the outdoor learning one. Keith just spent a little bit of time talking about coordination and really trying to make the feel of everything feel as integrated as possible. And the outdoor learning spaces around the around the classroom wing and just outside of the cafeteria area is an element that we're really working closely together with them. We have we're scheduling another meeting to talk about them some more. So I'm going to probably gloss over that a little bit more today and just really focus on 1 and 2, the vehicular circulation and the bus circulation today, because those are the areas that I think we've made the most advancement on. This slide that you're looking at right now was the sort of point in time at SD where we stood, where we had the 18 cars, the 10 car queue, and 134 parking spaces. The feedback that we got when we met was that we need the 18 buses, but maybe there's a better way, a more efficient way, or at least a different way to stack the buses that also saves us some impervious area, right? We're still being very cognizant of that 15% threshold. It's not we found out that it's not as cut and dry of a number, that 15% impervious, as we thought it once was, because we're going to be doing some mitigation strategies to help with it, so we don't have to be exactly at 15% or under, which is good news. But we're still looking at ways to reduce pavement as much as we can. But one of the asks was to try to add a few additional parking spaces. We're at 134 here. If you can go to the next slide, please, Lorraine. You see that we tried to move a few things around and create some efficiencies. We were able to increase the total parking to 150, which was the ask. So I feel pretty confident there. And we also sort of, as you can see, rearranged the way the buses would work in the afternoon. It's critical to understand that this is the afternoon pickup, not the morning drop off. And I have a couple other slides after this. I think that'll reiterate that. But we can still get 18 buses onto the site. We were able to reduce the overall amount of pavement, add a little more car pickup queue onto the site. But then, like I said, get another 16 parking spaces onto the site. So this is, again, all this is a work in progress. We're still tweaking like the final locations of parking areas, rotating things, playing with stuff and everything like that to make sure that we have enough space to get drainage, all of our drainage requirements in here, make sure that we have enough space to make everything that we want to get on the site work out. Good, Lori. So relative to the traffic study, which we got the draft traffic study back, and it confirmed a lot of the elements that we had proposed as being okay. So like I said, the bus drop off, bus pickup, morning drop off, you can see highlighted in the green dash line. Very simple because it's a rolling drop off. So we've been anticipating that the buses will come in through that, what we're calling the main entrance, drop off at the larger bus drop off area, and then exit from the northernmost exit drive. And then in the afternoon, because all the buses will be queued on the site, all 18 buses will be queued on the site, we'll have some buses coming in from the southernmost access drive and queuing to the west of the school, and then some coming in from we'll call it the main access drive, and queuing to the north of the school. Just as had before, this is, you'll probably notice here that this is the old site plan. We did this specifically because the traffic study was based on this site plan, not the new site plan that we've just been developing in the past few weeks. So I wanted to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples when I present this to you. So all of that stays the same, and there were no level of service issues with the bus drop off or pickup in the traffic study. And then the next slide, please, is the parent drop off pickup and loading dock access. Again, the main access drive for both morning and afternoon for the parents would be the main access drive. There's an 11 car queue at the front, and then they leave via the parking, the last aisle of parking out into their own separate egress drive, just like it's been since SD, so that we keep the buses and the cars separate when they're exiting the site. And then loading dock access is through the same access drive, the southernmost access drive that the PM buses would also use. We don't anticipate any coordination issues with those, because the timing of when the loading dock is utilized can be worked out. So that's where we are right now. And I think all the level of service items in the traffic study were either like A, most of them were A or B. I think they're anticipating that nothing getting worse. If anything, things could get slightly better, given that there's there'll be less cars for the one school as opposed to the two combined schools. So those were the main takeaways from the draft traffic study. Does anyone have any questions?
Yep, Heather.
I'm sorry to be the one who keeps speaking up, but just a question on the pickup. Yeah, this one is perfect. Quickly, the buses and cars and parent drop-offs have to cross each other somehow. If the cars are lining up against there and then the buses are coming past them, is that, I guess I just want to point that out and ask, is that going to work smoothly? Is there a good way for that to work?
Yeah, I think, we've had a lot of discussions about it. The buses will be queued, right? So at the end of the day, the buses will come in onto the site and they'll be queued and they'll be parked waiting for the kids to come off. So all the buses will be sort of in place. And then it's just an operational issue, just like it is right now, as to when the bus is released and then as the parents pass through. So it's more of an operational thing that we've been working out with Lori and Justin. So.
Okay.
And Russ, I should mention that Russ Hughes has been part of this as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, so I just wanted to wrap up with a little general update where we are. We are complete through the design development educational programming. As we said, there'll probably be some back and forth, but the primary educational programming is complete for the DD phase. As Mike mentioned, we did receive the draft of the traffic study. We're still going through that. The traffic engineer did confirm the circulation patterns with no additional mitigation required. So that's good news for us. We may have some comments back to them. And as soon as we get the final, we will share that with the full committee. We're just still going through that. We did complete our geotechnical investigations. We've received the draft report. Again, we're going through that as a team right now. Once we finalize that, we'll share that out. I think the big news and the good news coming out of this is that the geotech has determined that the soils on site can be reused, although we will need to manage them appropriately on site. So what does that mean for those of us who are now starting to become real soil experts in the world? Glacial till, it is something that you have to control, you have to maintain it. So if we're taking it out in phase 1, but not using it till phase 2, it goes through weather and it goes through winter, and how do you protect that and make sure that it's manageable and it's still useful at the end of the day? So that is part of our charge right now, is to work with our site group, our civil team, our geotechnical engineer, to create specifications that put requirements around how the contractor moves that soil, what we do with it when we're stockpiling it. So to that end, the new charge is for our site team to come up with stockpile areas that can accommodate the existing soils on site. And therefore we would not have to do our environmental testing. We would not have to do our export and pay, which is what's currently included in the budget. There is quite a bit of soil to stockpile. We've been working with the water department, and unfortunately we've hit a bit of a roadblock with them that we can't use their access behind the site to get down to the lower field. So we do need to see where we can stockpile on site that doesn't limit the existing school operation during the new construction. We can't limit their parking. We're not going to limit their play areas. So we are looking at that plan now and developing it. The goal is to try and have that resolved, so our DD estimate accounts for that, whether it's all on site or, before Stephen Crane had left, he did find some offsite locations where we could potentially store some and bring it back. There's a lesser cost there, but there's still a cost to truck it offsite and truck it back. In any case, when you're stockpiling, you have to move it around the site. So there's some movement costs regardless, but our goal would be to try and keep it on site as much as possible. So our next steps and our charge there is for us to come up with a plan, sit down with Laurie and Justin, make sure that it is amenable to the school operation and does not interfere with the education or the play for the kids or the safety for the students and the staff during the construction phase. But I think this is really good news for the project. And as I had mentioned at the last meeting, we have our geoenvironmental engineer on hold, because if we can keep it all on site, we do not need to exercise them and do testing, and you can keep that money in your budget. And the hydrant flow, as we know, is complete, and we now have a fire pump. And I think I only have one more slide, which was next steps, which is our next building committee meeting is on May 26th. And the there we're going to do a comprehensive update of where we are, as well as discussing the interior finish palette, because our DD estimating package is due to our estimators the next day. Internally, we did talk about another design subcommittee meeting on the 19th, so I'll ask Hill to send that out to make sure that that's going to be feasible and everybody can accommodate that date. And between now and then, and hopefully before the end of this week, we will get our sustainable subcommittee meeting scheduled as well. So that is on me to do. And that is our slideshow for today. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Lorraine. Lorraine, can you just say a little bit more about, so I heard you say that we can't access the site through the water department's roadway. And I walked that site a while ago, so I think I know where that is. Can you just say a little bit more about what that means? And does that create a real problem for us? Or is it simply something we should take off the table and not push on?
Lorraine, you're muted right now, Lorraine.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
I'm not going to ask you to push on it just yet, Pat. So this is the lower field. There's a path down here. The existing building is here. There's this steep path that gets down to that lower field. We were looking to use that lower field to stockpile the topsoil, because that's what comes off first, and we'll be putting back last. But in order to do that, we need to use the road that goes down to I think it's the Jenny Dugan well, Mike.
Correct.
But there is a radius, let's say, around that well that we cannot cross over with heavy vehicles. So we were looking to try and see, is there a way for us to get down this way, because it is not physically possible for trucks to get up and down because of the steepness of this path over here.
Right.
So I think Mike is looking at, is there a way we can get down there and stay outside that radius? None of us want to take down more trees than we need to take down, so that's part of the balance there. So I think our first approach is going to be, okay, what can we do up here? And how much can we get up here that is readily accessible first? And then look at what's left over, and then decide, okay, do we look at taking some trees down so we stay outside the radius, or do we look at that offsite location that Stephen Crane had come up with to see if that's viable? Because if we don't have to export and import, we're saving a lot of money for the project.
That was a big number. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Steve, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, it just comes to mind that the accessibility of the lower field was a question at the early stage that we decided to decouple from the project. But if there's a large cost savings to not trucking off site, would creating that pathway for trucks and eventually for the future to improve upon to provide ADA access around either direction, around the radius or down the hill. I don't know if that's something that would be worth considering if the money is not really lining up. I don't know.
What's the vertical change?
It was like
Lorraine?
Dawn, it's like a one-to-one slope there.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it would be down by the water department.
It's tough.
It's going to be a long path, 1 in 20. Yeah. Just speaking from experience, and of course I'm on the Architectural Access Board, so that's I'm not opposed to it, Steve. I would be all for it. I just worry that it would be cost prohibitive. But to get trucks down there is not an accessibility issue, but providing long-term access. If we do any work there, then we would need to.
Or trucks would probably need something like an 8% slope. We could make it work with 8%, I think, for trucks. But I missed the last part of what you said, Steve, so I'm sorry if you could.
What about around the water department radius? Is it, I mean.
Yeah, we're looking at that right now to see if we can do something. So they own the access drive. They did not say out of hand, you cannot use our access drive. At first they said it's prohibited. Then I said, well, what if we can just temporarily use the access drive to get there, stay out of that zone of influence for the well area. And they said that they would entertain something if we came back with something. So we're looking to see if there's a way. But like Lorraine mentioned, there'll be some tree clearing involved if we do that. There'll certainly be some tree clearing involved. There's no way to get around that.
So we're looking at what the options are. And I think starting with up top first and foremost, and then looking at where we fall out. Thank you, Steve. Heather?
Mine's really quick. In fact, it was very similar to Steve's, and I'll only add a quick side note to it, which is if we end up using that or creating that lower path and have to get rid of trees, I'm always thinking about kids and the access to nature, and could it be some type of, you know, path through the woods that then teachers and kids can use somehow in their work when they're connecting students to nature somehow. So just a side thought there. If we need to take down trees, that maybe there's you know, a reason for it in terms of connecting them to nature somehow too.
Yep.
That's all.
That's all we had today, Pat. I know it was a lot to cover. I appreciate everybody's time and patience with us. Oh, I see more hands.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, just touching on Lorraine's point about the soils and the cost savings there. In view of all the design details we've seen so far, do SMA and Hill anticipate any significant changes in the cost estimates for the whole project?
I would say that there are substantial changes going on right now in the industry, Chris. The numbers are all over the place, absolutely all over the place. It's more an issue right now of material availability. And some of our projects, we've had to look at different ways of doing things that, you know, we can't get the product. Glass mat, fiber, you know, fiberboard. It's 12 months out. So some of what we're looking at right now is what is an alternate way of achieving the same goal with different materials. I'm not sure. We're estimating on the 27th, but we're not bidding till next spring. So this volatility we're going through, you know, none of us have that magic ball to say, you know, is the war going to end? Will that help things once the war ends? Is, you know, because that's where some of this volatility is starting to creep in right now. So I think it's going to be a challenge for us. It's going to be a challenge for our estimators to sort of put our blinders on and say, here we are in May estimating a project that gets bid next March. And what's it going to be?
It sounds like you start with materials and the volatility in materials, and work from that point before you start mucking around with fundamental parts of the design.
Absolutely.
Lorraine, I would add, sorry, this is Peter Martini. I would add that as far as as we've been walking through the design, we are staying with the plan. So as far as the design goes and cost goes, and material selections and everything else, we're on track there. As far as what happened in 2021, that's built into our estimates. 2022, we've built in a percent. And from what I've seen right now through reports through March, we are kind of exceeding a little bit of what we have in there, but you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the year, but it's pretty close. I would agree 100% with Lorraine that our major concern is material availability. So just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Peter. Steve, do you have a question? Your hand's still up.
In previous meetings, we had discussed potentially asking scheduling consultants to come on to provide an update on the project schedule and with materials and equipment and utilities, and you never know what's going to be a really long lead time. Have we made any progress there? Is that something that we should expect as part of the DD package presentation?
Ian, you want to report on that?
Yeah, sure. So we've actually engaged with a local builder, Commodore Construction, and we've asked them to put together a more detailed construction schedule to validate some of our assumptions. You know, right now we're carrying 22 months for construction of the building, and so we have a meeting with them on Tuesday to review their schedule and talk about the detail and how they put that schedule together and their assumptions and that sort of thing. So the thought here is that, you know, we validate schedule and be able to report to you guys at the May meeting. so that we can carry, you know, a more refined schedule for the DD estimate, because it's going to affect, as you know, general conditions, general requirements, timeframes, and escalation and that sort of thing. So.
Can I ask a question how that works, Ian? Because Commodore builds schools in 149. Wouldn't that give them an advantage having all this information on this particular project?
So I've discussed this job ad nauseum with them, trying to churn the competitive waters. We don't think they're going to be a bidder, but putting together a schedule a month before, I didn't feel as though it was a big issue.
Okay, I mean, if they did end up building and I was a competitor and I knew that they had participated, I might have a problem with that, but.
Yep. No, I weighed
We
that.
need to be careful.
No, I
please.
know, Don. I weighed that. I have relationships there, so that's why we did.
They're building one of our projects right now.
I know that.
Okay.
So is there, it seems to me like it's a really great idea to have an independent scheduler give us another opinion. Don raises a concern, and maybe we can talk about this more offline, but I'm wondering if there are other options that gets us to that independent scheduler giving us some more information without incurring that risk.
What, as far as, sorry about Pat, as far as putting a construction schedule together?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
Hill will do it.
well, Hill will do it, I know, and you were looking for a local independent
Exactly.
scheduler to give us a sort of a validation or another opinion. I guess I'm just throwing out there if there is a concern about, I don't know, violating some rules about competitive edge, that is there another way to go about this? I guess I'm asking you, Dawn, or is it just something that we'd have to run the risk of?
I don't know. I mean, what do you guys typically, do you always go to an outside company for scheduling? I guess.
I mean,
I've never, yeah,
option is
full
we have a-
disclosure, I've just never worked with you guys, so I don't
Yeah.
know what your protocol typically is.
I mean, our other option or avenue here, and we thought going with kind of a local source would be better, but we have an estimating group in our New York office that can churn out an estimate
Schedule.
Schedule. But we just wanted someone that has local building experience.
Have we precluded them from bidding? Are they gonna, have we said to them, you can't bid on this if you do this?
Commodore is 99% sure that they're not going to enter into the competitive building 149 market for this particular project. And that was a discussion I had with them before they looked at this. And we've done it before. So to answer Don's question, we've reached out to local general contractors. We have relationships in the past on projects.
I think we're in such a peculiar time with the building environment and we are interested in making sure we're on schedule and what we understand what the schedule is given the building environment. But maybe this is something we could, I think it sounds like maybe we need a little bit more of a comfort level with this, or maybe we just proceed. I'm out of my depth here, but I just, it seemed to raise a question. I'm totally in support of getting as much information as possible for our scheduling for this project, but I'm not quite sure where.
I'll have a discussion with them before we avail ourselves of their final schedule. I'm not anticipating an issue.
right.
I think
Okay,
Steve has his hand up. Pat.
okay, Steve.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I dropped off. My internet died, so I'm on my phone now. I apologize for missing it if we talked about it. But is Commodore going to be paid for their services? Is that a consideration?
No,
Okay.
I mean, they may, but right now, we asked them for a schedule. We haven't discussed it, so.
I think that helps.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Right. If there's nothing else, is there any new business? And Carlin, do you have your hand up for public comments?
I do, when you're ready. Okay.
If
now's a good
there's no
time.
new business, then Carlin and her bluebirds can speak.
Thank you, Pat. Carlin Reed, 83 Woods End. Question back to the soil. I love dirt. The offset locations to store the excavated soil. What locations have been identified? And remind me again how many cubic yards of soil we're talking about. Thanks.
So Pat, I will get that information to you after the meeting. I need to go through. There were so many that were in and out. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember. And the quantity will depend on what we can keep on site. So it'll be the balance. So we need to finish that calculation, but I will get you those potential locations.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to run some new cut fill calculations too, based on these updated designs. So that'll have some impact on it as well.
Okay. Any other public comments? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote. Alexa. I guess Alexa is off. Court,
Yes.
Heather Bout,
Yes.
Frank? Frank Hannon, you okay with adjourning? I think that was a yes.
Muted, but it looks like a yes.
Yeah. Peter's not on again. Dawn?
Yes.
John Harris?
Yes.
Russ Hughes? Lori Hunter?
Yes.
Amanda Cohn? No, I don't need to do that. Sorry. Chris Popov?
Yes.
Charlie Parker?
Yes.
Matt Root?
Yes.
Steven Stashewski?
Yes.
Pat Nelson, yes. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.